Morning, everybody. The time is 10 o'clock. I'll call to order the March 27, 2025 Planning Board meeting. We are joined by Commissioner Washington.
Good morning.
Commissioner Giraldo.
Good morning, everyone.
And I'm Chair Shapiro. Please note that the deadline for all participant pre-registration and for all submission of materials and exhibits was 12 noon on the Tuesday before this Planning Board meeting. Registered speakers can join the meeting with the link provided in the email provided by the Planning Board office, or listen by phone, or be here in person. Of course, anyone can tune in to watch via live stream. If you wish to speak or become a person of record and you're not here in this room, we have an online web form. In addition to our commissioners, we are joined by our principal counsel, David Warner. Good morning, Mr. Warner.
Morning.
We have Jessica Jones, our Planning Board administrator.
Oh, good morning.
Rhonda Ford, our technical hearing writer.
Morning.
And Sherry Connor, the acting development review division chief. Good morning.
Good morning.
We also have our technology team, Mr. Flanagan, Mr. Cron, the rest of the team who are doing a job as we work through our transitions and our hybrid meetings. So thank you all, as always, to the team for helping us through this process. We will take up the agenda in the order of cases as described in the agenda. And we will start with our commissioners' items. And this is a bittersweet one. We have a resolution of appreciation for our Mr. Carlos Ocasio. Yeah, so he was an area specialist with the Northern Recreation Leisure Services Divisions. He was retiring effective April 30th after 22 years of service with the department. He's contributed in all sorts of ways to the health of the county in the northern area specifically. He began his career as a program specialist at the Langley Park Community Center. He's held any number of different roles, area specialist, regional manager, acting assistant division chief. He oversaw coordinating youth and teen recreation programs and events, supervising career contract employees as well as volunteers. There's just a whole, I can't even begin to name all the different roles that he's had and all the ways that he's been helpful. He was instrumental in the development and implementation of the Latino Service Day for area teens, the first Latino celebration of Three Kings Day, the first futsal league within the county. He has contributed to the Hispanic Heritage Month celebration, the annual festivals, Veterans Day celebrations, on and on. I really want to thank Carlos for his innovative thinking, for his can-do attitude. We have our Deputy Director, Wanda Ramos, who is division leader, I believe, his first employer. But I want to turn to you to add a few remarks if you'd like to.
Yes, good morning. For the record, Wanda Ramos, Deputy Director of Recreation and Leisure Services for the Maryland National Capital Park and Planning Commission, Department of Parks and Recreation. And yes, it is a bittersweet moment to see Carlos leave. We worked together at Langley Park Community Center. I was a facility director, and so for 23 years, 22 plus, because he started as a seasonal staff with me. It's kind of sad, but I'm very happy. And I want to congratulate Carlos on his retirement. I'm very happy for him. I know he's eager to begin his retirement career, the next career, the final, and travel with his wife that has been retired now for a couple of years.
That's great.
Yes. So thank you for doing the resolution this morning, and we will be presenting. You're invited to Carlos on Tuesday, April 1st. Will be his retirement party.
Thank you very much, Deputy Director.
Thank you.
So with that, colleagues, we have a resolution before us, and I would look for a motion.
I would move approval.
Second.
And I wanted to add that I know Carlos, met him when I was first appointed, and I know he was very instrumental in promoting activities for Latinos, but especially also with veterans.
Mm-hmm.
So I really hate to see him go, but I understand after 22 years.
Well said. So we have a motion by Commissioner Giraldo, a second by Commissioner Washington. With no further discussion, I'll call the roll. Commissioner Giraldo.
I vote aye.
Commissioner Washington.
Vote aye.
I vote aye as well. The ayes have it 3-0. I neglected to say that Vice Chair Bailey will be absent for the day. We're maybe stating the obvious, but just we're the three of us and we have a quorum. Next item is a draft minutes from our March 2025 meeting. Is there a motion?
Move approval?
Second?
Got a motion by Commissioner Washington, a second by Commissioner Giraldo with no discussion. I will call the roll. Commissioner Washington.
Vote aye.
Commissioner Giraldo.
I vote aye.
I vote aye as well. The ayes have it 3-0. We now have our consent agenda, a number of items on the consent agenda. Is there anyone from the public or any board member who wishes to discuss any of these items? If not, what is your pleasure, colleagues?
After consideration of the record for item numbers 4A, 4B, and 4D through E, I move adoption of the staff findings and approval of the items on the consent agenda in accordance with the recommendations of staff. Second that.
Got a motion by Commissioner Watkins and a second by Commissioner Giraldo on the consent agenda. There's no discussion. I'll call the roll. Commissioner Washington.
I vote aye.
Commissioner Giraldo.
I vote aye.
I vote aye as well. The ayes have it 3-0. We'll now move on to our regular agenda items. We will start with item 5, reconsideration of preliminary plan 4-10020, Vineyards 2. This was approved by the planning board November 29, 2012.
Yeah.
And Mr. Haller is representing the applicant, is requesting a reconsideration hearing for condition 15F. The request was granted in the planning board meeting January 16, 2025, and the hearing is on the merits of that request. Mr. Bartlett, we will start with you for a staff presentation on this, and then we will hear from Mr. Haller, of course.
Morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. For the record, I'm Jason Bartlett with the subdivision section. Item number 5 on the agenda is a reconsideration hearing for preliminary plan of subdivision 4-10020 titled The Vineyards 2. At the January 16th, 2025 planning board hearing, the planning board granted the applicant's request to waive the rules of procedure and hear the reconsideration to modify condition 15F of Prince George's County Planning Board Resolution number 12-107A in furtherance of substantial public interest due to other good cause and inadvertence which resulted in an error. The applicant's request is specific to a single condition of approval related to the timing of the master plan trail construction on parcel D of the subject site. As detailed in staff's memorandum and supported by the applicant's letter to Chairman Shapiro dated December 12, 2024, unanticipated delays have prevented the applicant from completing construction of the master plan trail within the time frame allotted with the first reconsideration that added condition 15F. This first reconsideration was approved by the planning board in 2019. However, because the applicant could not predict or foresee that the wetland delineation and environmental issues associated with the trail construction would take more than 5 years to resolve, they did not build in the ability to adjust the timing of construction provided in condition 15F beyond 5 years. As such, the second reconsideration requests to revise condition 15F to allow the Prince George's County Department of Parks and Recreation the ability to adjust the timing for construction of the master plan trail in conjunction with the posting of a new performance bond, letter of credit, or other suitable financial guarantee adjusted for inflation. Furthermore, with the requested revision to condition 15F to allow the Department of Parks and Recreation the ability to adjust the timing for construction, no further reconsideration of the timing for the trail construction will be necessary. In conclusion, staff recommend that the planning board approve this reconsideration of preliminary plan of subdivision 4-10020 to amend condition 15F as outlined in staff's memorandum. This concludes staff's presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Bartlett. Colleagues, any questions for staff before we hear from the applicant?
Question?
I have none.
No questions. I neglected to say this is, come on forward, Mr. Howard. I neglected to say this is an evidentiary hearing. So if it's relevant, then we'll swear somebody in at the appropriate time. But we'll turn to you, Mr. Howard.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. Thomas Haller on behalf of the applicant. As other zoning attorneys have trickled in before you since you came back in person, I did want to note that the last time I personally appeared before this planning board was on March 12th, 2020. As everybody knows, 2020, everybody knows what happened after that. But what I did want to say was I thought about this last night as I was preparing for the hearing. The world shut down after March 12th of last year. The planning board's next planning board hearing was scheduled for March 19th. That hearing was moved to March 26th. And on March 26th, you did a virtual double agenda and you kept things going.
Mhm.
I just wanted to publicly thank this planning board, all the members of staff who are still here, all the members of staff that have moved on for really yeoman's work, because you kept this county moving. It kept development proceeding, kept economic development running, and it was an amazing effort to not skip a beat. You literally did not skip a beat, and I can't tell you how thankful we are. All of our clients who were able to continue to proceed with projects, and it was quite remarkable what the planning board was able to do, and I just wanted to thank you publicly for doing that.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
With regard to the case that's before you, when I appeared before you for the reconsideration, I told you I could talk for hours, and I think it was Ms. Washington said, please don't do that. What I will only say this morning, and we do agree with staff's summary and with the proposed revision to the condition, but as the condition was written back in 2019, basically it gave a period of time within which the work had to be done, or the Department of Parks and Recreation was forced to pull the bond. And when it became obvious that we weren't going to be able to meet that 5-year time frame, we contacted them and said, well, we'll give you the money. And they said, we'd rather have you build the trail. And quite frankly, because if we were to build, if we could build the trail, it would connect to nothing. It would be a trail from nowhere to nowhere. And so we are proceeding forward with trying to resolve the environmental issues. We're getting closer. We do finally have a floodplain delineation from DPI. Our natural resources inventory is in for revision, and we're working out the other details with regard to floodplain impacts with DPI, and we will be proceeding forward. It will require us to move forward under the new zoning ordinance, which is fine, and but we will get back and we will get this trail constructed. The condition, as Mr. Bartlett indicated, now that the way it's proposed to be revised, will not require us to come back again, because it gives us the opportunity to work with DPR to make sure that the timing works. And then the other thing I think the board saw from the backup is that the original bond that was posted 5 years later is woefully underfunded. So we will be providing an updated bond that will make sure that the bond covers the actual cost of construction based on today's dollars. So we believe that it's an appropriate modification of the condition and fulfills the original intent of the board, which was to see a master plan trail constructed. Thank you very much. Glad to answer any questions.
Mr. Howard. Questions?
No, just thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Haller. If we have no other questions for staff or the applicant, I will close this public hearing. It is a public hearing. Colleagues, what's your pleasure?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we adopt the findings of staff and approve the reconsideration of preliminary plan 4-10020 to amend condition 15F as detailed in staff report.
Second.
Got a motion by Commissioner Washington, a second by Commissioner Giraldo. No discussion. I will call the roll. Commissioner Washington.
I vote aye.
Commissioner Giraldo.
I vote aye.
I vote aye as well. The ayes have it 3-0. Thank you, Mr. Bartlett. Thank you, Mr. Howard. And thanks again for the kind words. I'll move on to item 6 on our agenda. This is zoning map amendment ZMA 2024-002, the Market College Park. This is a request for continuance. Mr. Hatcher, we'll start with a staff presentation by Mr. King. Take it away. The floor is yours.
Mr. Chair, if I may, Mr. King is fairly new to the department, and this is his first presentation before the planning board. He comes to us from Connecticut with some experience in land use planning and economic planning. So we're excited to have him as a planner two in zoning.
Thank you, sir. We'll be sure to grill you on your first case.
Great, yeah, it's great to be here. Thank you. Okay, yeah, I'll get started. Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the Planning Board. For the record, my name is Evan King, planner with the zoning section. And this case is zoning map amendment 2024-002, the Market College Park. In a March 13th memorandum to the Planning Board, the applicant requested a continuance of this case to the April 24th, 2025 Planning Board meeting. The continuance is necessary to allow additional time to coordinate with planning staff. Public notice signs for this application were posted on February 25th, 2025. If the continuance is granted, additional posting will not be required. Staff recommend that the Planning Board approve the requested continuance and schedule this case for the April 24th meeting. This concludes staff's presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. King. Colleagues, any questions for staff?
Yeah.
We have Mr. Hatcher on the line virtually. Mr. Hatcher, turn to you. Anything you want to add?
Hello, Madam, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. In a truly day of first, I'd like to introduce Jonathan Martin, who's with CL Hatcher. It's his first time appearing before the Planning Board. He has some experience with Big Law downtown and decided he wanted to try some land use with us.
Excellent. Welcome.
Good morning, members of the Planning Board. My name is Jonathan Martin. I'm the land use attorney with CL Hatcher in Laurel, Maryland. As Chris mentioned, this is my first time appearing before the Planning Board. We represent the applicant, the Market College Park LLC, for the PD zoning map amendment, ZMA 2024-002. Of course, Chris is here to answer any questions that the Planning Board or staff may have for him. We have submitted into the record a request for a continuance of this hearing to April 24th, 2025. We are now amending the continuance request to have the hearing on May 1st, 2025, to allow for additional coordination between the applicant and planning staff on certain elements of the application. Staff has had an opportunity to review the continuance request and have expressed support for the continuance. In closing, the applicant respectfully requests that the Planning Board accept the staff's recommendation and grant the applicant's continuance request to hold a hearing on ZMA 2024-002 on May 1st, 2025.
Thank you, Mr. Martin. I just want to be clear, Mr. Martin, Mr. Hatcher, your request is to continue this until May 5th?
May 1st.
May 1st.
Yes.
Okay. And Mr. King, staff is fine with that?
Yes, we have no objections.
Okay. All right, great. Thank you, colleagues. Any questions for staff or the applicant on this continuance request? If not, what is your pleasure in this item?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the request to continue ZMA-2024-002 to Planning Board hearing date of May 1st, 2025.
Second that.
Got a motion by Commissioner Washington, second by Commissioner Giraldo. With no discussion, I will call the roll. Commissioner Washington.
Vote aye.
Commissioner Giraldo.
I vote aye.
I vote aye as well. The ayes have it 3-0. Thank you for our firsts today with Mr. Martin and Mr. King. Well done, both of you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And we will thank you, Mr. Hatcher, as well. Move on to item 7 on our agenda. This is a preliminary plan of subdivision 4-24016 Fairview Manor. This case was continued from the Planning Board meeting of February 20th. This is also an evidentiary hearing, so if we need to swear folks in at the appropriate time, we will. We've got Mr. Antonetti representing the applicant. We have Mr. Bartlett. Again, we'll be giving a staff presentation, and we will start with staff. Mr. Bartlett, take it away.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. For the record, I'm Jason Bartlett with the subdivision section. Item number 7 on the agenda is a preliminary plan of subdivision for Fairview Manor, case number 4-4016, which proposes 2 lots for single-family detached development. The application is further subject to an approved certificate of adequacy under case number 80Q-2024-027. This case was previously continued from the Planning Board hearing date of February 20, 2025. No citizens have signed up to speak on this application. However, staff received 4 items of additional backup from the applicant prior to the noon deadline on March 25th. They are applicant's Exhibit 1, which is an email from the applicant to which the exhibits were attached. Applicant's Exhibits 2 and 3, which are letters in support of the subdivision, one written by a resident of the community and one written by the Fairwood Community Association. And applicant's Exhibit 4, which is the applicant's request to revise one of the recommended conditions of approval, Condition 2, which staff is in agreement with. In conclusion, subdivision staff recommend that the planning board adopt the findings and approve PPS 4-24016 Fairview Manor, 31 Tree Conservation Plan, TCP 1-033-20224, and a variance from section 27-422D, subject to the conditions contained in the technical staff report and as modified by applicant's Exhibit 4. This concludes staff's presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Bartlett. Colleagues, any questions for staff at this point?
I have none.
No questions. We'll turn to the applicant. Mr. Antonetti, the floor is yours.
Good morning, Chair Shapiro, members of the Planning Board. For the record, my name is Robert Antonetti with the law firm of Shipley and Horn. Today with me is my partner, Arthur Horn, and senior land planner, John Ferrante. And together, we're pleased to represent Fairview Manor LLC regarding this preliminary plan of subdivision, utilizing the prior subdivision regulations. Today, we also have with us Ms. Tamla Kirkland and Mr. Maurice Cates, representative of the applicant, Mr. Tom Zyla from GLW, the civil engineers on the project. And we also have pleased to have Ms. Jill Oliver. She's president of the Fairwood Owners Association as well, who has signed up. I'd like to thank Mr. Bartlett for his very thorough review of this case. His staff report is outstanding, and it's been a pleasure to work with him on this project. As you have read and heard in the staff report, this application looks to divide the current parcel, which is 9.9 acres, into 2 lots. The property is protected by an historic environmental setting, which requires an historic area work permit for any development within the boundaries of the property. That will continue. The applicant does request a second lot using the RE zone. Both lots are accessed by 2 separate 22-foot wide private driveway easements. The property, as you can see, is completely surrounded by open space parcels, which is owned by the Fairwood Owners Association. So those 22-foot wide driveway easements are necessary. But in turn, there is a requirement for 50 feet of width at a public street or a street frontage in the RE zone, which we can't meet here because without any control by this applicant or its predecessor, this property was surrounded by these HOA parcels. So that's the reason for the variance, which staff supports, and we greatly appreciate that support because we feel it's appropriate and meets all the requirements of the zoning ordinance for approval of a variance. Although this application is for 2 lots, which one for the second one being for a potential single-family detached home, there is a strong willingness here on the part of the applicant and the Fairwood Owners Association Fairwood Community Association to have this second lot be transferred to the Fairwood Community Association through a separate agreement to be used as open space. Fairwood is a beautiful community. It surrounds this project, and it would be, I think, a very fitting opportunity for them to acquire it. It would have numerous benefits as outlined in the staff report. And ultimately, the Historic Preservation Commission, I think, was quite supportive of this eventuality of the Owners Association acquiring this, the Community Association acquiring this lot too. So upon approval of this preliminary plan of subdivision, hopefully it will be approved with the associated variance. It's our applicant's intent here to proceed in finalizing the transfer of this lot to the Community Association for their continued use, which will only enhance the overall setting for this site and allow for a greater connection with the historic resource with the community that surrounds it. So with that, we do recommend and urge your support of the staff's findings and recommended conditions of approval. We do, as Mr. Bartlett pointed out, have an exhibit with a slight modification for condition 2, which staff has indicated that they support, and we do appreciate that support. And with that, we greatly appreciate your consideration of this application. Our team is here to answer any questions that you might have, and we thank you for your time today.
Thank you, Mr. Antonetti. Colleagues, any questions for the applicants?
No, I have none.
Ms. Oliver, are you on the line?
Yes, I am.
I just want to give you the opportunity to speak if you want to. I need to swear you in. You don't need to, but I'm respectful of you being here. And if you want to take a minute, I can swear you in and you can say a few words if you want to.
Sure, you can swear me in.
Okay. Do you solemnly, please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that your testimony will be the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Okay. You are under oath and the floor is yours.
Thank you. I don't have a lot to share. I am just here in support of the plan, and as Mr. Antonetti stated, the Fairwood Community Association Board and its members are in full support of the actions to subdivide the property, and we are going to look to work closely with the owners of the historic home to really partner and make that part of an extended connection with the larger community. So we are very, very supportive of this plan, and that's why I'm here today. And I thank you for your consideration and the opportunity to speak.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Oliver. Thank you for your leadership as always. And it sounds like we've got a pretty good resolution as well. Hold on one sec. I'm having a technical issue. Ms. Oliver, you're fine. I just need to reconnect to the internet, folks.
Thank you.
Okay, we're back in business. All right, Ms. Oliver, thank you. Do we have an Ashley Green on the line as well? Ashley Green?
No.
Okay. Okay. All right. I just want to make sure. Is there anyone else who signed up to speak or who's here in the room who is planning on speaking on this? If not, I will turn back to Mr. Antonetti for any final words before we close the public hearing. Anything you want to add, sir?
Nothing further. Just we appreciate your time and support of this application. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. So with that, I will close this public hearing. And colleagues, what's your pleasure on this item?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we adopt the findings of staff and approve preliminary plan 4-24016, PCP 1-033-2024, and variance to section 27-442D, subject to the conditions as outlined in staff's report and is further modified by applicant exhibit number 4.
Second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Washington, a second by Commissioner Giraldo. With no discussion, I will call the roll. Commissioner Washington.
I vote aye.
Commissioner Giraldo.
I vote aye, Mr. Chair.
I vote aye as well. The ayes have it 3-0. Mr. Antonetti, Ms. Oliver, Mr. Bartlett, thanks everybody for your time on this item. Now move on to item 8 on our agenda. This is an extension request for a preliminary plan 4-20039 Town Square at Suitland Federal Center, Phase 2C. We have Ms. Vatendost, who's going to be giving a staff presentation. Mr. Horn will be representing the applicant. Again, this is a request for a 1-year extension, and we'll start with staff.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and members of the board. For the record, I'm Mahsa Vatendost with the subdivision section. Item number 8 on the agenda is an extension request for preliminary plan of subdivision 4-20039 titled Town Square at Suitland Federal Center, Phase 2C. This preliminary plan of subdivision was approved by the Planning Board on December 1st, 2022, and the resolution of approval was adopted on January 5th, 2023, and is valid through January 5th, 2025. Preliminary plan approved 9 lots and 1 parcel for development of 9 single-family dwelling units. By letter filed on January 2nd, 2025, the applicant requested a one-year extension of the plan's approval. This is the applicant's first extension request. If this request is approved, the preliminary plan of subdivision will be valid through January 5th, 2026. Section 24-119D of the prior subdivision regulations authorizes the planning board to grant an extension to the normal expiration of a preliminary plan of subdivision when certain criteria are met. These criteria and their findings are listed in the staff's memorandum. No citizen has signed up to speak on this case, and staff has not received any exhibits prior to the Tuesday noon deadline. Based on the staff's finding, the staff recommends that the planning board grant us a one-year extension for the preliminary plan of subdivision 4-20339 in accordance with the findings listed in the staff's memorandum. This concludes the staff's presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Fatendus. If there's no questions for staff, we will turn to the applicant, Mr. Horn.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the planning board. For the record, Arthur Horn, the
Go
law
up.
firm of Shipley and Horn.
Mr. Horn,
Here, can you hear me?
now we can hear you. Yeah, we couldn't hear you at first, but go ahead.
Okay, sorry. Good morning. Let me just make sure I'm tuned up. Okay, it says, again, for the record, Arthur Horn, the law firm of Shipley and Horn in Largo, Maryland, here with my partner, Robert Antonetti, also our senior land planner, Mr. Andrew Shelley, here representing the Prince George's County Redevelopment Authority. That name you heard earlier, Mr. Chairman, Ms. Ashley Green, is with the Prince George's County Redevelopment Authority. This is a request for a one-year extension of the preliminary plan. You may recall these 9 lots in July of 2024. We actually came with the site plan or special permit for those 9 lots. We're ready to move forward. We just had a little delay with reference to an issue with the stormwater management. And there was some, unfortunately, some litigation going on associated with some of the development at the site. But again, the applicant is moving forward expeditiously and will soon continue to have the build out of this beautiful community, as you all know. I'm sorry that Vice Chair Bailey is not here today. Because I know she knows and she's represented this area for a long time, how this area has really been transformed into a really beautiful site. So we thank you for your consideration for the extension.
Thank you, Mr. Horn. Colleagues, any questions for the applicant on this item?
No.
No questions. No questions for staff or the applicant. Then, colleagues, what is your pleasure in this item?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we adopt the analysis and recommendation of staff and approve the one-year extension for preliminary plan 4-20039.
Second that.
Got a motion by Commissioner Washington, a second by Commissioner Giraldo with no discussion. I'll call the roll. Commissioner Washington.
Vote aye.
Commissioner Giraldo.
I vote aye.
I vote aye as well. The ayes have it 3-0. Thank you, Mr. Horn.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Fatendus. We now have 2 legislative drafting requests. I don't know who's going to be on point for this.
Mr. Chair, that will actually be Marion Honnessy here with today. Thank you.
Sounds great. We are joined by our planning director. I just want to have a shout out to Director Hull. And take it away.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the Planning Board. My name is Marion Honnessy. I'm Acting Planner 4 with the Planning Director's Office, and I'm here to provide the staff report on LDR 02 2025. Next slide. This is a simple reminder of the process. We are at the first step right now. Next slide. The purpose of the bill is for the purpose of modifying the parking or site plan requirements for senior serving developments located in transit-oriented zones, requiring that a parking or site plan for such developments include a parking demand study and setting forth the necessary elements of the parking demand study. Next slide. This new use is only proposed in the LTO and RTO zones and not required in the other zones in the county. Next slide. The proposed language allows the proposed use in the RTO and the LTO zones subject to the following: a parking plan or site plan for a development primarily consisting of household living uses for older persons as defined by Title 42. The plan shall include a parking demand study, which demonstrates that sufficient parking spaces will be provided on site for the unique transportation needs of older persons. Next slide. Here are some of the issues, just to highlight the concerns with the use of the words sufficient and unique, a lack of clarity or objectivity with the phrase sufficient number of parking spaces for older persons, insufficient information on the contents of the parking plan or site plan, and an explanation of what happens when the study does or does not demonstrate sufficient parking will be provided. Next slide. Here is our analysis. In a nutshell, a residential development can by right have at least one parking space per dwelling unit in the RTO and LTO core zones as a maximum, and structured parking spaces also do not count toward the maximum, so garage or other structured parking is already unlimited. Any changes to the minimum and maximum requirements will need to be addressed in the parking standards of Section 27-6305 and zone maximum requirements in 27-4204 B1D. Next slide. This conflicts with the Prince George's County Draft Climate Action Plan by encouraging parking and not reducing dependency on automobiles, and requires more off-street parking in the RTO and LTO zones, which is inconsistent with the purposes of these zones to require less parking and encourage other forms of transit. Next slide. We've noted these items in our staff report and recommend that the Planning Board take no position on LDR 02-2025. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hennessy. Do you have somebody who's signed up to speak on this item, who's in person, Mr. Guzman? No?
Mr. Guzman, for the next slide.
Okay, all right, thank you. Staff is recommending, they have some expressed, they have feedback on this, concerns, comments, or recommendations that we take no position, but we forward on those concerns and comments. Colleagues, thoughts, discussions on this?
Yeah, I'd like to know what the theory was behind with this legislation, if we know. Is there an issue?
Was there a specific project or projects that was driving it that we know?
Mr. Chair, for the record, James Hunt with the Planning Director's Office. We're unaware of any specific case itself, but we are looking, we were just addressing the concern that has been raised by the council member.
Sure, I understand.
So it sounds like that at the time they were wanting to address concerns relevant to, parking with older persons and trying to provide that as a means of providing parking and adjusted parking requirements within specific areas, those high density areas here within Prince George's County.
But that kind of goes counter to transit-oriented development. That's what's confusing. We want the transit-oriented development. We need that density. So this seems to counter that.
But it's specifically
whether or not.
But it's specific for senior housing development. That's the interesting part about it. So
it's not putting that clarification. That's what staff's concern is at this point in time, is to provide that clarification that's needed. And we were unable to have that identified as a part of this legislation.
So is it to make sure that there's enough parking for seniors? Is that it?
It's specifically for seniors.
Yeah. And pardon my ignorance, for a legislative drafting request, is it tied to a specific council member who made the request?
It's a bill sponsor, I believe, on this one.
There is a bill sponsor.
Is that correct?
Councilmember Ivy.
Okay.
Okay.
Because an example, and coincidentally, we were just talking about this with the previous case. I know that there was some real pushback in Suitland with the senior housing that was built there, because there were some concerns that there was inadequate parking for the seniors.
That could be related, yeah.
If I may answer, it's Councilmember Ivy.
All right. I mean, I think it's complicated, and I appreciate staff's diligence on this. I'm inclined to follow staff's lead and take their position and forward the comments to the council based on the legislative draft request. If you all are comfortable with that, I'm good. Okay. All right. So we take these items up separately, and I'm looking for action on item 9.
I move that we adopt the findings of staff's report and recommend no position on LDR-02-2025.
I'll second that.
Got a motion by Commissioner Washington, second by Commissioner Giraldo. No discussion. I'll call the roll. Commissioner Washington.
I vote aye.
Commissioner Giraldo.
I vote aye.
I vote aye as well. The ayes have it 3-0. We will now move on to item 10 on our agenda, which Mr. Guzman has been waiting patiently for. And we have Ms. Hennessy will be giving the staff presentation on this item.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the Planning Board. My name is Marian Hennessy, Acting Planning 4 with the Planning Director's Office. I'm here to provide the staff report on LDR 53-2025. Next slide. This is a simple reminder of the process, and we are at the first step right now. Next slide. The purpose of this bill is for the purpose of defining opioid treatment centers as a new principal use type, establish the zones in which this new use type is permitted as shown on the principal use tables, setting forth conditions under which this new principal use may be approved, and establishing off-street parking requirements for this new use. Next slide. This bill proposes to define opioid treatment centers as a privately owned facility which primarily provides outpatient services and treatment, including pharmacological interventions for opioid use disorder as part of the opioid treatment program certified by the Federal Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration. An opioid treatment center is not a hospital, methadone treatment center, or medical facility, as those uses are defined in the zoning ordinance. Next slide. This new use will be permitted in the CS, CGO, IE, IH, TIC Edge, LTO Edge, RTO L Edge, and RTO H Edge, and is prohibited in all other zones in the county. Next slide. And would be subject to the following: a 500-foot setback from any rural and agriculture or residential-based zone, land proposed for residential use on an approved basic plan for the LCD zone, approved detailed site plan, or any property associated with the following: a school, library, park, playground, or recreational facility. Next slide. The planning director may impose other reasonable requirements deemed necessary to safeguard the health, safety, morals, and general welfare of the community, and a statement shall be submitted addressing specific outlined requirements. Next slide. So in a nutshell, our policy analysis is that there is insufficient information of when the planning director imposes the other reasonable requirements. There's a concern with the use of adequate in reference to vehicular access, establishes a use, opioid treatment centers permitted by right, and enables opioid treatment uses, but circumvent the requirements of special exception approval required for similar medical treatment uses as methadone treatment facilities. Next slide. Imposes specific requirements for permitted uses that are generally objective standards without guidelines explaining what the planning director should be considering, and requires more off-street parking in the RTO and LTO zones, which is inconsistent with the purposes of these zones to require less parking and encourage other forms of transit. Next slide. We've noted these items in our staff report and recommend that the planning board take no position on LDR 53-2025. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Honesty. Colleagues, any questions for staff on this item?
Yeah, I guess I would just offer, and it's quite similar to the item number 9. Why a specific, is there anything currently that would prohibit an opioid treatment center from being constructed? You know, I mean, I'm just wondering why. Do we know? Have any idea?
For record, James Hunt with Planning Director's Office. We are at this point in time, which is, I believe, what Ms. Honnessy was speaking of, in certain situations, a special exceptions required when it comes to these specific uses. It's actually permitting them in about, I think, 8 different zones, I believe, if I remember correctly. And so it's expanding those zones that would be permitted within. And so there as a part of the special exception process, there, as you all know, there potentially are impacts to those area neighborhoods. And so now it's allowing that to kind of push forward without having any additional process behind it. As far as analysis taking place under the special exception process, that typically would take place with the zoning hearing examiner. So it would come this
would eliminate the need for a special exception.
Correct. It would go straight to be a flat permitted use versus having to go through the special exception process for many of the zones.
Which is different than a methadone center.
Correct.
That I don't.
Yeah, right. Mr. Warner.
Yeah, David Warner, Principal Counsel. I can just add to what James was saying in that, no, they're not currently permitted in the zoning ordinance. They aren't really discussed at all. But because drug treatment facilities aren't allowed in these locations, that's the purpose behind the bill. And we do allow specifically methadone treatment currently, the county does, but not treatment for other opioids, of which methadone is one. So that's the purpose behind the bill.
Okay.
Thank you for that.
Good. Thank you.
Yeah, I would say, colleagues, I think it's an admirable purpose, and we want to make sure it's done right. And I think staff has some very thoughtful comments about what would be helpful as the council considers this bill. So I'm for what it's worth, I'm comfortable with staff's recommendation that we take no position, but we forward the comments that staff has made.
Just more restriction or more parking.
I did catch the parking one too, right?
Yeah.
But I wasn't sure whether they were suggesting whether that's a expanding of a parking minimum or maximum. We're just trying to sort of align the parking with what other similar facilities have. Do you know?
Information on you. Sorry.
You all, the parking piece, you didn't flag that as something that felt significant one way or the other. It didn't sound like.
Right. We were, not opposed to that issue on here as well. But the way it's stating right here, it's just adding in there, which are typically what you find a lot within, between inside and outside the Beltway. It looks like it's the same requirement as far as one space per 1,000 square feet of gross floor area. It was typically about the same there.
Okay, so they're
consistent.
Essentially standard recommendations.
Right.
Okay. All right, colleagues, any other questions on this item?
No.
If not, what is your pleasure on this item?
I move that we adopt the findings of staff's report and take no position on LDR dash.
Oh, I'm sorry. Before we do that,
Yes.
I apologize if you can hold up the motion. Mr. Guzman, I forgot to recognize you. After all that waiting, please, sir, come forward, identify yourself for the record, and the floor is yours.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Chair and members of the Planning Board. My name is Yuri Guzman, and I'm here today to express my support for LDR 53-2025. This legislation defines opioid treatment centers as a new principal use type. It establishes thoughtful zoning regulations, and it ensures that these critical services reach our community. It's a vital step to confronting the opioid crisis that ravages not just the country, but Prince George's County. This epidemic is not distant. Probably everybody in this room has been touched by addiction at one point or another, whether it's family, friends, neighbors. It's a public health emergency. I'm here before you basically as an operator who wants to offer these services to Prince George's County. Under the current zoning ordinance, the special exception process makes it pretty much operationally impossible to start a treatment program here in Prince George's County. The most recent opioid needs assessment in 2021 recognized that Prince George's County has nearly 4,500 patients that need services that exceed the amount of services that Prince George's County can offer. The county ran a opioid treatment program within its own health center. That treatment center stopped operations in January. Since then, they've redirected their patients to 3 other clinics. Only one of those clinics is here in Prince George's County, in Laurel. The other 2 clinics, the county is telling patients that they have to travel for an hour plus, either to Montgomery County or to neighboring Charles County. Prince George's County needs these services. People need to reach these services. It is absolutely just critically vital. So I want to thank you for the opportunity to speak. I'd like to thank you for considering this, and I urge you to adopt LDR 53-2025. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for the work that you do.
Appreciate that.
And thanks for being patient with us and taking the time to come back as well, sir.
If anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
No, I thank you for the added context around the legislation.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
All right. Take care. Okay, so back to us, colleagues.
And with the added context, I wonder if staff considered taking a position of support for this legislation.
Mr. Chair, members of the Planning Board, for the record, James Hunt with the Planning Director's Office. We did not consider taking, we were looking at more so what was before us and allowing the council to make those decisions, those specific decisions when it relates to this situation, because we do realize the bill sponsor had probably already had some considerations already. And so we wanted to, at our point in time, we did not consider having a position on this. We just, at this point, wanted to have no position, I believe, was my understanding.
And if I can, Commissioner Washington, I'm tugged in a similar way. This LDR process, I think, with rare exception, I think it's cleaner for us to sort of not step in the role of the council. And, we make recommendations, we transfer staff's recommendations, we add our own thoughts to it, and we let the council be the council. I think it's cleaner that way.
Yeah, that's fine. I would just offer that in the comments that we transmit, kind of the sentiment of this discussion.
Yeah, I agree with that. Can we transmit something we add that says that we believe this use is important to have in the county, and blah blah blah, and we take no position.
Absolutely, we will do that.
Great.
Okay, good. So with that,
incorporating our conversation, Mr. Chairman, I move that we adopt the findings of report in addition to the discussion held by the commissioners and take no position on LDR-53-2025.
Second that.
We've got a motion by Commissioner Washington, second by Commissioner Giraldo with no discussion. I'll call the roll. Commissioner Washington.
Vote aye.
Commissioner Giraldo.
I vote aye.
I vote aye as well. The ayes have it. 3-0. Ms. Guzman, thank you again. Ms. Hennessy. Mr. Hunt, thank you all very much. Ms. Connor, any further business before us?
No further business. Thank you.
All right, then without objection, folks, we are adjourned. Thanks everybody for your time.
Thank you.